My name is Ambrose Russell, and I'm 68 years old. And last week, my son walked into my daughter's house and found me washing dishes with bruised, shaking hands. He stared at me in disbelief. "Dad, why are you doing chores all day? Where's your dignity?" Before I could answer, my son-in-law appeared behind him, smirking proudly. "Respect, he's my house help now. I give the orders here." My son slowly removed his jacket. And what he did next made my son-in-law freeze in fear. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you are watching from. You want to know what it feels like to be treated like dirt in your own home, to wake up every morning at 5 a.m., not because you want to, but because you're terrified of what will happen if you don't. Let me paint you a picture of my life over the past 8 months. A life I never thought I'd live. A life that stripped away every ounce of dignity I'd spent 68 years building. Every single morning, my alarm would go off at 5. Not that I needed an alarm anymore. My body had learned to wake up on its own, conditioned by fear and exhaustion. I'd drag myself out of bed, my joints screaming in protest, my back aching from sleeping on that thin mattress in what used to be my storage room. Yes, you heard that right. I was sleeping in a storage room, in my own house. The house I bought with my own money. The house where I raised my children. The house where my late wife and I built a lifetime of memories. But none of that mattered anymore. By 5:15, I'd be in the kitchen starting breakfast, not for myself, mind you, for them, for my daughter Rebecca and her husband Marcus. Marcus, who sat on my couch like a king on his throne. Marcus, who hadn't worked a real day in the 8 months they'd been living with me. Marcus, who treated me like I was nothing more than the help. My hands would shake as I cracked eggs into the pan, these hands that used to pull people out of burning buildings. I was a firefighter for 32 years. 32 years of running into danger while everyone else ran out. I saved lives. I earned medals. I earned respect. But those days felt like they belonged to someone else now. Someone stronger. Someone who wouldn't have let himself become this. The bruises on my hands were fresh most mornings. Purple and yellow marks that told the story of scrubbing floors until my knuckles bled. Of carrying heavy garbage bags down 3 flights of stairs because Marcus said the trash smelled and he couldn't be bothered to take it out himself. Of doing laundry by hand because he claimed the washing machine was too expensive to run for my clothes, even though it ran just fine for his designer jeans and Rebecca's endless wardrobe. By 6 a.m., breakfast had to be on the table, not a minute later. If it was late, Marcus would slam his hand on the table and remind me that punctuality is a basic requirement for any employee. Employee, that's what he called me, in my own home. I'd stand there in the kitchen doorway, watching them eat the food I prepared. Marcus would shovel scrambled eggs into his mouth without even looking at me. Rebecca would stare at her phone, scrolling through social media, occasionally giggling at something she saw. Neither of them said thank you. Neither of them acknowledged that I'd been up for hours while they slept comfortably in what used to be my master bedroom. After breakfast came the dishes. Mountains of dishes, plates, cups, pans, utensils, all left for me to clean while they retired to the living room, my living room, to watch TV on my television, to sit on my furniture. Then came the real work: sweeping, mopping, dusting, vacuuming, scrubbing bathrooms, cleaning windows, all before noon because Marcus had a schedule he expected me to follow. He'd actually written it out and taped it to my storage room door. A schedule, for me, like I was a maid service he'd hired. Mondays were for deep cleaning the bathrooms, Tuesdays for changing all the bed sheets and doing laundry, Wednesdays for washing windows and scrubbing floors, Thursdays for organizing closets and cabinets, Fridays for grocery shopping and meal prep for the weekend, Saturdays for yard work, Sundays for whatever additional tasks Marcus decided needed doing. I had no days off, no rest, no peace. My body wasn't made for this anymore. I'm 68 years old, for God's sake. My knees buckle when I crouch down to scrub the baseboards. My shoulders burn when I reach up to dust the ceiling fans. My lower back feels like someone's driving a knife into my spine every time I bend over to pick up their dirty clothes off the floor. But the physical pain, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the humiliation, the degradation, The way Marcus would snap his fingers at me like I was a dog. The way he'd inspect my work and point out every tiny imperfection. The way he'd make me redo entire rooms because he found a single spot I'd missed. Ambrose, he'd shout from wherever he was lounging, not Dad, not Mr. Russell, just my first name barked like a command. Ambrose, bring me a beer. Ambrose, my shoes need polishing. Ambrose, the trash is full again. And I'd go every single time, because what choice did I have? You're probably wondering why I didn't just kick them out, why I didn't stand up for myself, why I let it get this bad. Believe me, I've asked myself those same questions 1,000 times, but it's not that simple. It never is. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Let me show you how I went from being a proud, independent man to a servant in my own home. It started 8 months ago, March 15th to be exact. I remember the date because it was 3 days after what would have been my wife Margaret's 70th birthday. She'd been gone for 4 years by then, but I still felt her absence like a fresh wound. The house felt too big, too empty without her laughter filling the rooms. That's when Rebecca called. "Dad, we need to talk," she said, her voice tight with stress. "Can Marcus and I come over tonight?" Of course I said yes. Rebecca was my youngest, my baby girl. Even at 34 years old, she'd always be my little girl. I'd raised her and her brother Benjamin after their mother died, poured everything I had into making sure they had good lives. Benjamin had moved to Seattle for work, so I didn't see him as often as I'd like, but Rebecca had stayed in the city. We had dinner together once a month. She was my connection to family, to not being completely alone. They showed up that evening looking exhausted. Rebecca's eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Marcus had his arm around her shoulders, playing the supportive husband. I'd never really warmed to Marcus, if I'm being honest. There was something about him that felt off, too smooth, too charming, like he was always performing, always playing a role. They'd been married for 2 years at that point, and I'd done my best to be welcoming. He was Rebecca's choice, and I respected that, even when I noticed little things that bothered me. The way he'd make snide comments about her weight, the way he'd check out other women right in front of her, the way he never seemed to have a job that lasted more than a few months. But that night, I pushed those concerns aside. My daughter needed help. "Dad," Rebecca began, settling onto my couch with a heavy sigh. "We're in trouble. Marcus's company downsized and he lost his job. My salon hasn't been doing well since that new franchise opened up down the street. We are behind on rent. We are behind on everything." Marcus jumped in, his voice earnest and pleading. "Mr. Russell, we hate to ask this, but we are desperate. We need a place to stay, just temporarily, just until we get back on our feet. A few weeks, maybe a month at most." I looked at my daughter's tearful face and felt my heart break. How could I say no? This was my child, my responsibility, the promise I'd made to Margaret on her deathbed that I'd always take care of our kids, no matter what. "Of course you can stay here," I said. "Family helps family. You can have the guest room. We'll figure this out together." The relief on Rebecca's face made me feel like I'd made the right decision. Marcus shook my hand firmly, thanking me profusely, promising they'd be out of my hair before I knew it. That was the first lie. The first week was actually pleasant. They were grateful, helpful even. Marcus insisted on cooking dinner a few times. Rebecca cleaned up after herself. They kept their things in the guest room and gave me my space. I started to think maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe this was what the house needed, some life, some energy, some family. But then things started to shift. Slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice at first. Week 2, Marcus suggested I let him handle some of the household chores. "You've been working so hard for so many years, Mr. Russell. Let me take care of the yard work. You rest." It seemed thoughtful, considerate. I was tired and my knees had been bothering me, so I accepted. Week 3, he offered to go grocery shopping for me. "I'm going anyway for some things Rebecca needs. Just give me your list and I'll take care of it. Save you a trip." Again, it seemed helpful. I gave him my shopping list and some cash from my wallet. Week 4, he brought up my finances during dinner. "Mr. Russell, I've been thinking, you're managing all these bills and expenses on your own. What if I helped organize things? You know, set up a system so everything's easier. Rebecca, and I feel bad that you're supporting us. The least we can do is help manage the household. That should have been my first red flag. But I was lonely, and I liked having someone to talk to about these things. Managing a household alone had been overwhelming since Margaret died, so I showed him my filing system, my bills, and my bank statements. Big mistake, huge mistake. By week 6, Marcus had somehow taken control of everything. He'd convinced me to give him access to my bank account just to pay bills more efficiently. He'd taken over all the grocery shopping, all the household management, and that's when I noticed things changing in the other direction. Mr. Russell, you know what? You've been sitting around a lot lately. That's not healthy for a man your age. Why don't you take over some of the light housework just to keep active? Doctors always say movement is important for seniors. Seniors, that word strung, but he had a point, didn't he? I had been less active, so I started doing dishes after dinner, then sweeping the floors, then a bit more, and a bit more. By week 8, Marcus sat me down for what he called a house meeting. Listen, we need to talk about the arrangement here, he said, his tone no longer friendly. It had an edge to it now, sharp, authoritative. Rebecca and I have been covering a lot of the expenses around here. Food, utilities, repairs. We're basically supporting this household. I started to protest, but Marcus, I'm the one. Let me finish, he cut me off. Since we're the ones paying for everything, I think it's fair that you contribute in other ways. You're here all day anyway, you might as well earn your keep. Earn my keep in my own house, the house I'd owned for 33 years, the house I'd paid off 15 years ago. But here's the thing that makes me so angry I can barely breathe when I think about it. He had my pension card. Somehow, during one of those helpful weeks, I'd given him access to my retirement account. He was transferring my pension into the household account he'd set up, an account only he controlled. I was paying for everything. My social security, my firefighter's pension, my savings, it was all going into his account, and he was using my own money to control me, to trap me, to turn me into his servant. I've made a schedule for you, he continued, sliding a printed paper across the table. Basic household tasks, nothing you can't handle, everyone contributes in this house. That's how it's going to work from now on. I looked at Rebecca, waiting for her to say something, to defend me, to tell her husband he was being ridiculous. But she just stared at her plate, silent, complicit. That was 2 months ago, and every day since then has been a living nightmare. The schedule wasn't negotiable. If I didn't complete tasks, Marcus would explode. He'd yell at me like I was a child who'd misbehaved. He'd threaten to find me alternative living arrangements, which was code for threatening to put me in a nursing home. You can't handle basic chores, Ambrose. Maybe you need professional care. Maybe you're getting too old to live independently. I hear there are some facilities that take people like you. People like me, like I was defective, broken, useless. The worst part, I started to believe it. After months of being treated like I was worthless, I started to feel worthless. The man I used to be, the firefighter who'd earned commendations for bravery, who'd mentored young recruits, who'd been respected by his community, that man felt like a distant memory, like someone from a movie I'd watched once. Now I was just Ambrose the housekeeper, Ambrose the servant, Ambrose the old man who couldn't even stand up for himself in his own home. My hands developed calluses and cracks from constant exposure to cleaning chemicals. My back developed a permanent ache from bending and lifting. My spirit developed a permanent crack from the weight of humiliation. I stopped calling my friends. What would I tell them? That I'd let my son-in-law turn me into hired help, that I was too weak to fight back. The shame was suffocating. Benjamin called sometimes, but I'd make excuses. Everything's fine, son. Rebecca and Marcus are here helping me out. Another lie. But I couldn't bear for him to know the truth. He was doing so well in Seattle, had a great career and a beautiful family. Why burden him with my problems? I'd lie in bed in that storage room, staring at boxes of Margaret's things I'd never been able to sort through, and I'd wonder how I'd gotten here, how I'd allowed this to happen. But somewhere deep inside, beneath all the exhaustion and shame and fear, there was still a flicker of the old Ambrose, the firefighter, the man who'd faced down flames and collapsing buildings, the man who'd survived. I wasn't dead yet. I started watching Marcus more carefully, noticing patterns. He'd leave his laptop open sometimes, banking tabs still visible. He'd have phone conversations about money, thinking I couldn't hear from the kitchen where I was scrubbing dishes. I learned he was gambling, a lot. Online poker, sports betting, my pension money, the money I'd earned through 32 years of risking my life, was being pissed away on Marcus's addiction. I learned he'd convinced Rebecca that I was declining mentally, that I needed them there to take care of me, that I'd be lost without them. Another lie to keep her complicit, to keep her from questioning what he was doing. I learned that he'd told the neighbors I'd moved in with them, that this was their house now, and they were graciously caring for their elderly father-in-law. Even my identity as the owner of my own home had been erased. The anger started to burn hotter than the shame. I'd survived a lot in my life: house fires, a divorce before I married Margaret, the death of my soulmate. I'd survived all of it. I sure as hell wasn't going to let Marcus Patterson destroy me. But I was still trapped, still terrified, still doing dishes at midnight because Marcus had decided to dirty every pan in the kitchen, making himself a steak dinner. Until last Thursday. Last Thursday, I was standing at the sink at 3 in the afternoon, washing lunch dishes with hands so raw the soap made me wince. My knuckles were bleeding from where I'd scraped them scrubbing the grout in the bathroom that morning. Marcus had decided the grout wasn't white enough, made me scrub it with a toothbrush, for 3 hours straight. I heard the front door open and close. That was strange. Marcus and Rebecca never left during the day, and we weren't expecting anyone. Then I heard a voice that made my entire body freeze. "Dad, Dad, where are you?" "Benjamin." My son Benjamin was here. He wasn't supposed to visit until Thanksgiving, still 3 weeks away. What was he doing here? I panicked. I didn't want him to see me like this. Bruised hands, exhausted face, servants' clothes, because Marcus had made me get rid of my nice clothes, said I didn't need them since I wasn't going anywhere. But before I could even dry my hands, Benjamin walked into the kitchen. The expression on his face is something I'll never forget. Complete shock, then confusion, then slowly dawning horror as he took in the scene, me at the sink, surrounded by dirty dishes, my bruised, bleeding hands, my stooped posture, the exhaustion written all over my face. "Dad," he said quietly, "what are you doing?" "Oh, hey, Ben," I tried to sound cheerful, normal. "What a surprise. I'm just finishing up some dishes. You know how it is. Your sister and Marcus have been helping me out so much. I like to pitch in where I can." Even as the words left my mouth, I hated myself for them. Maury lies, Maury protection of the people who were destroying me. Benjamin walked closer, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. He's a lawyer, my son, criminal defense. He's trained to notice details, to spot when something's wrong. "Why are you doing chores all day?" he asked, his voice tight. "Where's your dignity?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps behind Benjamin. Marcus appeared in the doorway, and I saw something flash across his face when he spotted my son. Irritation, anger that his control was being challenged. But Marcus recovered quickly, putting on that smooth smile he wore so well. "Benjamin, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you until—" "Where's Rebecca?" Benjamin cut him off, his eyes never leaving mine. "She's out shopping. Listen, your dad has been amazing, really stepping up around here. We've been helping him stay active, you know. It's important for people his age to have purpose." Benjamin turned slowly to face Marcus. "Purpose? My father's purpose is to be your servant." Marcus's smile tightened. "That's a bit dramatic. We're a family here. Everyone contributes. Your father wants to help out." "Is that true, Dad?" Benjamin turned back to me. "You want to be scrubbing dishes with bleeding hands. You want to be doing chores like an employee in your own house." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Years of being beaten down, of having my spirit crushed, had stolen my voice. Marcus stepped forward, that edge creeping back into his tone. Look, Benjamin, I don't know what you think you're seeing here, but your father is fine. He's being taken care of. In fact, since you're so concerned, maybe you should know that he's been showing signs of decline, memory issues, confusion. Rebecca and I have been shouldering the burden of caring for him. We've turned our lives upside down to make sure he's okay. That was when something in me finally snapped. Memory issues, confusion. I was exhausted and beaten down, but there was nothing wrong with my mind. This was gaslighting, pure manipulation, and he was doing it right in front of my son. That's not true, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Ben, that's not true. I don't have memory problems. I'm not confused. He's my house help now, Marcus interrupted, his voice turning cold and firm. I give the orders here. Your father lives here under my care, and this is how we've structured things. If you have a problem with it, Benjamin, maybe you should have been around more often to help out yourself instead of running off to Seattle and leaving your elderly father alone. The manipulation was masterful. Turn it around, make Benjamin the bad guy, make him feel guilty. But Benjamin didn't flinch. Instead, he did something that made my heart swell with hope for the first time in months. He slowly removed his jacket, folded it carefully over his arm, and took 2 steps toward Marcus. His expression had changed completely. The shock and confusion were gone, replaced by something ice-cold and dangerous. Say that again, Benjamin said quietly. Say that one more time. Marcus's smirk faltered. What? You said my father is your house help. You said you give the orders. Say it again. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. The room fell silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Marcus looked between Benjamin and me, clearly trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation. But Benjamin was a lawyer. He dealt with bullies and manipulators for a living. And Marcus was suddenly realizing he'd gone too far, said too much, revealed too much in front of the wrong person. Now hold on, Marcus backpedaled. I think there's been a misunderstanding. What I meant was, where's your bedroom, Dad? Benjamin asked me, his eyes still locked on Marcus. The storage room, I admitted quietly, down the hall. Benjamin's jaw clenched. The storage room, and where are Marcus and Rebecca sleeping? The master bedroom, my bedroom. I see, and who owns this house, Dad? I do. Who pays the mortgage? It's paid off. I paid it off 15 years ago. And who receives Social Security and a pension? I do. Benjamin turned his full attention to Marcus now. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. You've moved into my father's house, taken over his master bedroom, forced him to sleep in a storage room, taken control of his finances, and turned him into your personal servant. Did I get that right? Marcus's face flushed red. You're twisting things. It's not like that. Your father needed help. We stepped up when you weren't here. We've been supporting him. Supporting him with his own money. That's an interesting definition of support. You don't know what you're talking about. You show up here once and think you understand everything. I understand enough, Benjamin said coldly. I understand elder abuse when I see it. I understand financial exploitation. I understand false imprisonment. Should I go on? Because I can. I'm a lawyer, Marcus. This is literally my job. The color drained from Marcus's face. Elder abuse? That's insane. We've been taking care of him. Is that why his hands are bleeding? Is that why he looks like he's aged 10 years? Is that why he's terrified to even speak in his own house? I felt tears burning in my eyes. Someone saw me. Someone understood. My son understood. Marcus tried one more time to salvage the situation. Listen, Benjamin, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally. Your father has been very happy with this arrangement, haven't you, Ambrose? All eyes turned to me. This was my moment, my chance to speak up, to tell the truth, to stop protecting the man who'd been tormenting me. But the words stuck in my throat. Months of conditioning, of being beaten down emotionally and psychologically had left me paralyzed with fear. Benjamin must have seen it in my face because his expression softened when he looked at me. "Dad, get your things. You're leaving with me right now." "He can't just leave," Marcus protested. "This is his home, we're his family, we're taking care of him." "He's not taking a single order from you ever again," Benjamin said, his voice like steel. "Dad, go pack a bag, whatever you need, 5 minutes." I didn't move at first. I couldn't quite believe this was happening, that someone was actually standing up for me, that someone was actually fighting for me. "Dad," Benjamin said gently, looking at me now instead of Marcus. "It's okay, you're safe now, go get your things, I'm not leaving without you." Something in his voice broke through the paralysis. I put down the dish towel with trembling hands and walked past Marcus, who was standing there with his mouth open, clearly trying to figure out his next move. I went to the storage room, my bedroom, and grabbed the small duffel bag I'd been living out of for the past 2 months. I didn't have much. Most of my belongings were still scattered around the house in places Marcus had decided I didn't need them anymore. But I grabbed what I could: some clothes, my wallet, a photo of Margaret I kept by my thin mattress. When I came back to the kitchen, Benjamin was on his phone, his voice low and professional. "Yes, I need to report a case of suspected elder abuse, financial exploitation, forced labor, possible false imprisonment. My father, 68 years old. Yes, I'll hold." Marcus had gone pale. "What are you doing? You can't call the police. There's been no crime here. This is a family matter." Benjamin held up one finger, silencing him, still speaking into the phone. "Yes, I'm still here. The address is 4782 Maple Drive. Yes, we'll be here." He hung up and looked at Marcus with an expression that could have frozen fire. "Adult Protective Services is opening an investigation. They'll want to speak with you and Rebecca. I strongly suggest you get a lawyer, Marcus. You're going to need one." "This is insane. I'm calling Rebecca. She'll straighten this out." "You do that," Benjamin said calmly. "In the meantime, my father is leaving, and if you try to stop him, if you so much as touch him, I will add assault and battery to the list of charges I'm building against you." Marcus looked at me, his eyes desperate now. "Ambrose, come on, tell him this is all a big misunderstanding. Tell him you're happy here." I looked at the man who'd spent 8 months systematically breaking me down, stealing my money, my dignity, my sense of self. The man who'd turned me into a servant in my own home. The man who'd gambled away my pension while forcing me to scrub toilets. "I want to leave," I said quietly. "I want to go with my son." It was the first time in months I'd spoken what I actually wanted. The first time I'd defied Marcus, and it felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. Marcus's face twisted with rage. "Fine, go, but don't think you can just come back here when you realize you can't make it on your own. This is your home, and we're the ones keeping it running. Without us, you'd be lost." Benjamin put his hand on my shoulder and guided me toward the door. "Let's go, Dad." As we walked out of that house, I felt the weight of 8 months of horror lifting off my shoulders. I was leaving, I was actually leaving, with my son safe. But I also felt terror. What would happen now? Where would I go? What about my house, my belongings, my life? Benjamin must have sensed my fear because he squeezed my shoulder gently as we walked to his rental car parked in the driveway. My driveway to my house. "It's going to be okay, Dad," he said quietly. "I promise you it's going to be okay. You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." I got into the passenger seat, and as Benjamin drove away, I looked back at the house. My house, the house where Margaret and I had raised our children, the house that had been turned into my prison. Rebecca's car pulled into the driveway just as we turned the corner. She'd see Benjamin's car leaving. She'd go inside, and Marcus would tell her what happened. Part of me wondered if she'd feel guilty, if she'd realize what they'd done to me, if she'd care. But that wasn't my problem anymore, not right now. Right now, I was in a car with my son, driving away from hell, and for the first time in 8 months, I could breathe. Benjamin drove us to a hotel downtown, not a cheap roadside motel, but a nice place with a doorman and soft carpet in the lobby. He checked us into a suite with 2 bedrooms, a living area, and the biggest bathroom I'd seen in months. "Take a shower, Dad," he said gently. "Take as long as you need, then we'll order room service, real food, whatever you want." I stood in that bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror, and barely recognized the man looking back at me. Gaunt face, hollow eyes, bruised, bleeding hands, shoulders slumped from exhaustion and defeat. When had I become this person? The shower was hot, gloriously hot, and I stood under the spray for 20 minutes, watching months of grime and despair wash down the drain. The soap strung my cracked, bleeding hands, but I didn't care. It felt like washing away the prison I'd been living in. When I came out, Benjamin had ordered enough food for 4 people. Steaks, pasta, salad, bread, dessert. He'd set it all up on the suite's dining table like a feast. "I didn't know what you'd want, so I got a bit of everything," he said with a small smile. "Eat whatever you like." I sat down at that table, and for the first time in 8 months, I ate a meal without having to serve someone else first, without having to wait until Marcus and Rebecca were finished, without having to eat standing up in the kitchen because there wasn't room at the table for me. I ate until I was full, actually full. It was incredible how something so basic, eating a proper meal, could feel like such a luxury. Benjamin didn't push me to talk. He let me eat in silence, occasionally serving me more food, refilling my water glass, treating me with the dignity I'd been missing for so long. Finally, after I'd eaten my fill and we'd moved to the living area, Benjamin spoke. "Dad, I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. How did this happen?" And so I did. I told him everything. About Rebecca and Marcus showing up, claiming they needed temporary help. About how Marcus slowly took control of the household, then my finances, then my entire life. About the schedule, the chores, the bruised hands, the storage room, the gambling, the threats to put me in a nursing home, all of it. I told him how I'd felt trapped, ashamed, convinced that somehow this was my fault, that I was weak for letting it happen, that I deserved it for being old and useless. By the time I finished, Benjamin had his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "Dad, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I didn't visit more. I'm so sorry I didn't see this happening. I should have been there. I should have protected you." "It's not your fault," I said quickly. "I didn't tell you. I was too ashamed. I didn't want you to know how weak I'd become." "You're not weak," Benjamin said fiercely. "You're a victim of abuse. There's a difference. What Marcus did to you, what Rebecca allowed to happen, that's criminal. That's elder abuse, financial exploitation, false imprisonment. These are serious crimes, Dad." "I just want my house back," I said quietly. "I just want my life back." "You'll get both," Benjamin promised. "But we need to do this right. We need to document everything, build a case, make sure they can never do this to you again. Can you trust me to handle this?" I looked at my son, my strong, successful, brilliant son who'd driven across the country the moment he suspected something was wrong, who'd walked into that house and immediately seen through Marcus's lies, who'd stood up to my tormentor without hesitation. "I trust you," I said. And for the first time in 8 months, I felt hope. The next morning, Benjamin was up early, already on his laptop, when I emerged from the bedroom. I'd slept in an actual bed, with clean sheets and soft pillows, and woken up without an alarm for the first time in months. My body still ached, but my mind felt clearer than it had in forever. "Morning, Dad," Benjamin said, looking up. "How'd you sleep?" "Like the dead," I admitted, "in a good way." He smiled. "Good. Listen, we have a busy day ahead. First, we're taking you to a doctor to document your injuries. Then we're meeting with an elder law attorney I know. After that, we're going to the bank to straighten out your finances. Sound okay?" I nodded, feeling both grateful and overwhelmed. Benjamin was taking charge, fixing things, but it was also a reminder of how much damage had been done, how much I'd need help to undo. The doctor's appointment was humiliating in a different way than living with Marcus had been. Dr. Sarah Chen was kind and professional, but having to explain how I got the bruises, the cuts, the rope burns on my wrists from where I'd tied trash bags so tight they'd cut into my skin, it made everything feel raw and real again. She took photos, documented every injury, noted my weight loss. I'd lost 23 pounds in 8 months, recorded my elevated blood pressure and signs of severe stress and anxiety. "Mr. Russell," she said gently, reviewing my chart, "I'm going to be frank with you. What you've experienced is severe elder abuse. The physical injuries will heal, but the psychological trauma may take longer. I'm recommending counseling, and I'm going to provide this documentation to Adult Protective Services. What was done to you was wrong. It was criminal, and I want to make sure there's a medical record of it." Hearing a doctor say it out loud, that it was abuse, that it was wrong, that it wasn't my fault, brought tears to my eyes. Validation. Finally, validation that I wasn't crazy, wasn't overreacting, wasn't weak. Next was the attorney. Jennifer Walsh was sharp as a tack, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes that had clearly seen too many cases like mine. Benjamin had worked with her before on elder abuse cases and said she was the best. She listened to my entire story without interrupting, taking notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she sat back and looked at me with a mixture of compassion and barely contained anger. "Mr. Russell, what happened to you constitutes multiple crimes under state law," she said firmly. "Financial exploitation of an elderly person, which is a felony, false imprisonment, theft by coercion, possibly fraud, depending on how Marcus gained access to your accounts. We have an extremely strong case here." "I just want my house back," I repeated what I'd told Benjamin. "I don't want revenge, I just want my life back." "I understand," Jennifer said, "but here's what you need to know. Getting your house back isn't just about asking nicely. Marcus and Rebecca have been living there for 8 months. They've established residency. They could claim tenants' rights. We need to approach this strategically and legally." My stomach dropped. "You mean they might be able to stay, even though it's my house?" "Not if we do this right," she assured me. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we're filing for an emergency protective order. Based on the abuse you suffered, we can get a court order barring Marcus from coming near you. Second, we're filing a motion to restore your financial control and freeze any accounts Marcus has access to. Third, we're working with Adult Protective Services and potentially the District Attorney's Office to pursue criminal charges. And fourth, we're filing for immediate possession of your home, based on the fraud and coercion involved in their residency there." It sounded complicated, overwhelming, but Benjamin squeezed my hand. "We've got this, Dad. Jennifer knows what she's doing." "There's one more thing," Jennifer said carefully. "I need to prepare you for the fact that Rebecca is going to be implicated in this too. She's your daughter, and I know this is painful, but she was complicit in the abuse. She lived in that house, saw what was happening, and did nothing to stop it. In fact, from what you've told me, she benefited from it." The mention of Rebecca sent a knife through my heart. My baby girl, my youngest child. How had she turned into someone who could watch her father be degraded and do nothing? How had I raised someone capable of that? "I know," I said quietly. "I know she's responsible too." "We don't have to decide right now how to handle her involvement," Jennifer said gently, "but I want you to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. This isn't just about Marcus. Your daughter enabled this abuse. She may face consequences as well." After the attorney meeting, Benjamin and I went to the bank. My bank, the one I'd been using for 40 years. The manager, Tom Hendricks, had known me for decades. When he saw me walk in with Benjamin, his professional smile faded to concern. "Ambrose, my God, are you all right? You look." "I need to access my accounts, Tom," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "And I need to remove someone who has unauthorized access." We sat in Tom's office while I explained the situation. His face grew more horrified with each detail. When I finished, he was already typing furiously on his computer. "Marcus Patterson has been making substantial withdrawals from your accounts," Tom said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Transfers to online gambling sites, cash withdrawals, purchases. Ambrose, he's gone through nearly $40,000 of your money in the past 8 months. $40,000. My pension, my social security, my savings that Margaret and I had built together. Gone, gambled away while I scrubbed floors and washed dishes. The rage that had been simmering inside me boiled over. My hands shook, and not from exhaustion this time, from pure, unadulterated fury. "Can you freeze the accounts?" Benjamin asked. "Prevent any further access." "Already doing it," Tom said. "All accounts are frozen as of right now. Marcus Patterson's access is revoked. Ambrose, I'm also flagging these transactions for potential fraud investigation. The bank should have caught this pattern. I'm deeply sorry we didn't. This looks like classic elder financial abuse." "Can I get the money back?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Tom's expression was sympathetic. "That's going to depend on a lot of factors. Criminal prosecution, civil litigation, whether Marcus has any assets to recover. I won't lie to you, it's going to be difficult, but we'll cooperate fully with any legal proceedings. We have records of everything." By the time we left the bank, I was exhausted. Not the bone-deep exhaustion of 8 months of forced labor, but the mental exhaustion of facing the full extent of what had been done to me. The abuse, the theft, the betrayal. Benjamin drove us back to the hotel, ordered dinner, and we spent a quiet evening just existing together. He didn't push me to talk. He put on old movies, classics Margaret and I used to watch together. He made sure I ate. He treated me like a person, not a servant or a burden. That night, lying in that comfortable hotel bed, I let myself feel everything I'd been suppressing for 8 months. The anger, the humiliation, the grief over what Rebecca had become, the fear that I'd never fully recover from this, the shame that I'd let it happen at all. But I also felt something else, something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I felt like I deserved better than what had been done to me. I felt like I was worth fighting for. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could be Ambrose Russell again, not Ambrose the servant, not Ambrose the victim, just Ambrose, the firefighter, the father, the man who'd survived everything life had thrown at him. The next morning, everything escalated quickly. Benjamin's phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Rebecca. He put it on speaker so I could hear. "Benjamin, what the hell did you do?" My daughter's voice came through, shrill with panic. "The bank froze all the accounts. Marcus can't access anything. We have bills to pay. You can't just—" "Rebecca," Benjamin cut her off, his voice cold. "Those are Dad's accounts. Marcus should never have had access to them in the first place. That money was being stolen." "Stolen? That's insane. Dad gave Marcus access. He wanted help managing his finances." "Did he, or was he coerced, manipulated, forced to hand over control while being systematically abused in his own home?" There was a long silence on the other end. When Rebecca spoke again, her voice was different, defensive, guilty. "Abused, Benjamin, you don't understand. Dad needed help. He was declining. We were taking care of him. Taking care of him by making him sleep in a storage room, by forcing him to do manual labor until his hands bled, by stealing his pension to fund Marcus's gambling addiction. That's your definition of care." It wasn't like that. You weren't there. You don't know how hard it was. Marcus was just trying to give Dad structure, purpose. It's good for elderly people to stay active." I'd heard these rationalizations before. They were the same lies Marcus had fed to Rebecca, and she'd swallowed them whole. Or maybe she'd chosen to believe them because it was easier than admitting what she was allowing to happen. "Rebecca, you watched your father become a servant in his own home," Benjamin said, each word deliberate and cutting. "You watched him suffer, and you did nothing. Worse than nothing, you participated, you benefited. And now you're making excuses because you know exactly how wrong it was. Don't you dare judge me. Where were you? Off in Seattle living your perfect life while I dealt with everything. You have no idea what it's like." "I'm judging you because you abused our father." Benjamin's voice rose, his composure cracking. "You let your husband torture him, steal from him, degrade him, and you said nothing. You did nothing. What happened to you, Rebecca? When did you become someone capable of this? I heard her crying on the other end of the line. Part of me, the father part, the part that had raised her and loved her and protected her for 34 years, wanted to confront her, but a larger part of me was too hurt, too angry, too betrayed to feel anything but pain when I heard her voice. I want to talk to Dad, she said through her tears. Let me explain, let me talk to him. Benjamin looked at me, the question clear in his eyes. Did I want to talk to her? I shook my head. I wasn't ready. I didn't know what I'd say. I didn't know if I could handle hearing her make more excuses, more justifications for what she'd allowed to happen. Dad doesn't want to talk to you right now, Benjamin said. Honestly, Rebecca, I don't know if he'll ever want to talk to you again. You need to understand the severity of what you've done. This isn't just a family disagreement. This is criminal. Adult Protective Services is investigating. The bank is investigating. Dad's attorney is building a case. You and Marcus need to get lawyers, real ones. Benjamin, please, we're family. We can work this out as a family. Don't involve lawyers and police, please. You stopped being his family the moment you let Marcus turn him into a slave, Benjamin said coldly. Expect to be served with legal papers soon. And Rebecca, you and Marcus need to be out of Dad's house, soon. He hung up before she could respond. I sat there in silence, processing what I'd just heard. My daughter making excuses, still defending Marcus, still trying to minimize what had been done to me. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Dad, Benjamin said quietly. No, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. I needed to hear it. I needed to know that she still doesn't understand, that she still thinks what they did was okay. It makes what comes next easier. What comes next is we fight, Benjamin said firmly, and we win. Over the next 3 days, Benjamin worked like a man possessed. He was on the phone constantly, with Jennifer the attorney, with Adult Protective Services, with the district attorney's office, with Tom at the bank. He was building a case, piece by piece, brick by brick. Meanwhile, I started the process of healing. Benjamin took me shopping for new clothes, real clothes, not the worn-out things Marcus had relegated me to. We went to a barber, and I got a proper haircut for the first time in months. We ate good meals, we watched movies, we talked. But mostly, Benjamin documented everything. He took photos of my injuries as they healed, creating a timeline. He recorded my testimony on video, having me explain in detail what had happened. He gathered bank statements, medical records, witness statements from my neighbors who'd noticed changes in me over the past months. Dr. Chen connected us with a therapist who specialized in elder abuse. Her name was Patricia, and she was patient and kind as I stumbled through my first session, trying to articulate the shame and fear and anger that had built up over 8 months. Ambrose, she said gently, you need to understand that what happened to you wasn't your fault. Abusers are experts at manipulation. They break you down gradually, so slowly you don't even realize it's happening until you're trapped. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But I should have fought back, I insisted. I was a firefighter. I ran into burning buildings. How did I let some punk like Marcus control me? Because physical courage and emotional resilience under abuse are different things, she explained. Marcus didn't attack you physically. He attacked your sense of self, your dignity, your identity. He isolated you, controlled your finances, made you dependent on him. These are classic abuse tactics, and they work because they're insidious. They creep up on you. It helped talking to Patricia. Not completely. I still woke up some nights in a panic, thinking I'd overslept and Marcus would be angry about breakfast being late. But it helped to hear that I wasn't crazy, wasn't weak, wasn't to blame. On day 4, Jennifer called with news. We got the protective order, she said, unable to hide the satisfaction in her voice. Marcus is legally barred from coming within 500 feet of you. If he violates it, he'll be arrested immediately. We also got emergency orders freezing his access to any joint accounts or property that involves your assets, and the judge has scheduled a hearing for next week on the issue of the house. A hearing, I asked. Marcus and Rebecca are fighting the eviction, she explained. They're claiming they're legal tenants who have been paying rent and can't be forced out without proper notice. It's nonsense. They've been living rent-free and stealing your money, but they have a lawyer now and he's making noise. My heart sank, so they might get to stay. Not if I have anything to say about it, Jennifer said firmly. We have documentation of abuse, financial exploitation, fraud. We have medical records, bank records, witness statements. We have you on video explaining what happened. The case is built on lies, and I'm going to tear it apart. But you need to be prepared, Ambrose. You're going to have to testify. You're going to have to face them in court and tell your story in front of a judge. The thought terrified me. Facing Marcus again. Facing Rebecca. Having to relive everything that had happened in a courtroom where they'd be sitting right there, watching me, probably hatting me for speaking up. But Benjamin put his hand on my shoulder, grounding me. You can do this, Dad. You're strong enough, and I'll be right there with you. The day before the hearing, something happened that nearly broke me. Marcus sent me a message. Somehow he'd gotten my new phone number. Benjamin had bought me a new phone to ensure they couldn't track me. The message came through at 2 in the morning, waking me from a restless sleep. Ambrose, this is Marcus. I know you think I'm the bad guy here, but I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to help. You needed structure, and I provided it. You needed purpose, and I gave it to you. I'm sorry if you felt like I was too hard on you sometimes, but it was for your own good. You were declining, and someone needed to take charge. Rebecca and I sacrificed everything to take care of you. We left our own lives behind. And this is how you repay us, by suing us, by trying to make us homeless. Think about what you're doing. Think about Rebecca. She's your daughter. She loves you. Don't let Benjamin poison you against your own family. Come home. We can work this out. We can forget this ever happened. You don't need lawyers and courts. You need your family. We need you. Please, Ambrose, don't do this to us. I read that message 3 times, and each time I felt the manipulation in it like a physical weight on my chest. The gaslighting, the guilt-tripping, the attempt to make me doubt myself, to make me believe I was the problem. For my own good. That's what abusers always say, isn't it? I hurt you for your own good. I controlled you for your own good. I stole from you for your own good. I showed the message to Benjamin in the morning. His face went dark with rage. He's trying to manipulate you even now, he said. Even with a protective order, even facing legal consequences, he can't help himself. He's still trying to control you. It almost worked, I admitted quietly. For a second, reading that, I almost felt guilty, like maybe I was overreacting, like maybe I should give them another chance. That's what abusers do, Dad. They make you doubt your own reality. But you're not overreacting, you're protecting yourself, you're demanding justice. That's not wrong, that's survival. Jennifer was furious when she heard about the message. That's a violation of the protective order. He's not supposed to contact you in any way. I'm filing a motion to hold him in contempt. This just strengthens our case. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through what I'd have to say in court, how I'd have to look at Marcus and Rebecca and tell a judge what they'd done to me, how I'd have to expose my shame and humiliation and fear in front of strangers. Benjamin found me sitting in the hotel living room at 3 a.m., staring out the window at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently, sitting down next to me. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "What if the judge doesn't believe me? What if they think I'm just a confused old man? What if Marcus convinces them that he was helping me?" "Dad, look at me." Benjamin waited until I met his eyes. "You have evidence, medical evidence, financial evidence, documentary evidence. You have a case that's so strong, 3 different lawyers have told me it's airtight. Marcus can't talk his way out of bank records showing he stole $40,000. He can't charm his way past photographs of your bleeding hands. He can't smile away your testimony and the testimony of your doctor and your neighbors. But what about Rebecca?" My voice broke. "I'm going to be in court against my own daughter. What kind of father does that?" "A father who's protecting himself," Benjamin said firmly. "A father who's refusing to be a victim anymore. A father who's teaching his daughter that actions have consequences. You didn't do this to her, Dad. She did this to herself when she chose Marcus over you, when she chose to stay silent while you suffered." I don't know if I can forgive her, I whispered. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at her the same way again. You don't have to decide that right now, Benjamin said. Right now, you just have to survive. You just have to tell the truth. That's all. Just tell the truth and let the justice system do its job. What if it's not enough? What if telling the truth isn't enough to get my home back? Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that I'll never forget. Dad, do you remember when I was 8 years old and I was terrified to testify in court about the car accident I witnessed? I nodded. Benjamin had seen a hit and run when he was a kid. The driver had almost gotten away with it until Benjamin agreed to testify about what he'd seen. You told me something that day that I've never forgotten. You said, Benjamin, telling the truth is the bravest thing you can do. It doesn't matter if people believe you right away. It doesn't matter if it's scary. What matters is that you said it out loud. Because once the truth is out there, it has power. Lies can only survive in darkness. Truth survives in the light. My own words, coming back to me decades later from my son, I'd forgotten I'd said that. But it was true. It had been true then, and it was true now. Tomorrow you're going to shine a light on what happened to you, Benjamin continued. You're going to speak the truth, and it's going to be scary, and it's going to hurt, but it's going to have power. Marcus built his control on lies and manipulation and darkness. You're going to destroy that with truth. When did you get so wise? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. I learned from the best, Benjamin said, squeezing my hand. I learned from a father who ran into burning buildings to save people, who raised 2 kids on his own after mom died, who survived heartbreak and loss and still found the strength to love and care for others. That man is still in there, Dad. That man is going to walk into court tomorrow and take back his life. I hoped he was right. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not the grand, dramatic space you see in movies, but a regular room with fluorescent lights and a judge's bench and rows of seats for observers. Marcus and Rebecca were already there when we arrived, sitting with their lawyer, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s who looked expensive. When Marcus saw me, something flickered across his face. Fear, anger, guilt, I couldn't tell. Rebecca wouldn't meet my eyes. She stared at her hands, folded in her lap, her face pale and drawn. She'd lost weight. She looked tired. Part of me still wanted to go to her, to comfort her, to make it better like I'd done her whole life. But I didn't. I sat on my side of the courtroom with Benjamin and Jennifer, and I kept my eyes forward. Judge Margaret Rodriguez entered, and we all stood. She was maybe 60, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Be seated, she said, her voice carrying authority. We are here today on the matter of Russell versus Patterson. This is a hearing on emergency orders regarding property possession and protective measures. Ms. Walsh, you're representing the petitioner. Jennifer stood. Yes, Your Honor, Ambrose Russell, the petitioner and legal owner of the property in question. And Mr. Patterson, I see you're represented by Mr. Davis. Marcus's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor, I'm representing both Marcus Patterson and Rebecca Russell Patterson in this matter. The judge nodded and looked at her notes. I've reviewed the initial filings. This appears to be a case involving allegations of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and illegal occupancy. Ms. Walsh, please present your case. What followed was the most difficult 3 hours of my life. Jennifer presented the evidence methodically, the photos of my injuries, the doctor's testimony about my weight loss, my stress indicators, my injuries consistent with forced manual labor, the bank records showing the $40,000 Marcus had stolen, the neighbor testimonies about seeing me doing yard work in all weather, looking increasingly frail and frightened. And then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the witness stand on shaking legs and swore to tell the truth. When I sat down and looked out at the courtroom, my eyes met Marcus's. He was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Rebecca was crying silently, her shoulders shaking. Jennifer approached me with a kind smile. Mr. Russell, can you tell the court in your own words what happened when your daughter and son-in-law moved into your home? And so I told my story, all of it, how they'd come to me claiming they needed temporary help, how Marcus had gradually taken control of everything, my finances, my household, my life, how I'd been moved to a storage room while they took my bedroom, how I'd been forced to do chores, given a schedule like I was an employee, threatened when I didn't perform to Marcus's standards. I described washing dishes until my hands bled, scrubbing grout with a toothbrush for 3 hours, being forbidden from eating until they'd finished, being called the help by the man who was stealing my pension. By the time I finished, I was crying, not from sadness, but from the relief of finally saying it all out loud, of finally being heard. "Mr. Russell," Jennifer said gently, "did you give Marcus Patterson permission to use your pension and Social Security payments for personal expenses, including gambling?" "No," I said firmly. "He took control of my accounts by convincing me he was helping me manage them. Then he used my money for himself. I didn't know about the gambling until recently." "Did you volunteer to do all the household chores, or were you coerced?" "I was coerced. He made a schedule. He said I had to earn my keep. He threatened to put me in a nursing home if I didn't comply." "Why didn't you ask for help sooner?" I swallowed hard. I was ashamed. I was scared. I thought somehow it was my fault, that I was weak, that I deserved it for being old and useless. "Do you still believe that?" "No," I said, and I meant it. "I know now that what happened to me was abuse, that I didn't deserve it, that I was a victim of people I trusted." Jennifer returned to her seat, and Marcus's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Davis had a pleasant face, but his questions were designed to make me look confused, unreliable, vindictive. "Mr. Russell, isn't it true that your memory has been declining, that you've been confused about dates and events?" "No, sir, my memory is fine." "But you're 68 years old. Surely at your age, some cognitive decline is expected." "I'm not suffering from cognitive decline. I was suffering from exhaustion and stress from being abused." "Abuse is a strong word, Mr. Russell. Isn't it possible you misinterpreted your son-in-law's attempts to help you?" "There's no misinterpreting being forced to scrub floors until your hands bleed," I said, holding up my still healing hands. "There's no misinterpreting having your pension stolen. My clients maintain that they were helping you manage your affairs with your consent. Then why did they take my bedroom? Why did they make me sleep in a storage room? Why did I have a schedule of chores to follow like I was their employee?" Mr. Davis didn't have a good answer for that. He tried a few more questions, attempting to paint me as vindictive or confused, but I held firm. I told the truth. When I was finally excused, I felt lighter, exhausted but lighter. Then Marcus took the stand. Watching him testify was surreal. He sat up there, confident and composed, and lied, smoothly, convincingly. He claimed he'd been helping me, that I'd been declining and needed structure, that the chores were therapeutic, recommended by doctors to keep elderly people active, that I'd given him access to my accounts voluntarily, that I'd been grateful for their help until Benjamin poisoned me against them. He even managed to make himself sound like the victim. "Your Honor, I sacrificed my own career to care for my father-in-law. My wife and I put our lives on hold to make sure he was safe and cared for. And now, because of misunderstandings and family drama, we're being painted as criminals. It's heartbreaking." It was a good performance. If I hadn't lived through what actually happened, I might have believed him. But then Jennifer stood up for cross-examination, and everything changed. "Mr. Patterson, you testified that Mr. Russell gave you access to his bank accounts voluntarily. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you claim you used that access solely to pay household bills and manage his affairs?" "That's correct." Jennifer pulled out a stack of bank statements. "Then can you explain these transactions? 23 separate transfers to online gambling sites, totaling over $30,000. Can you explain how gambling with Mr. Russell's pension money constitutes managing his affairs?" Marcus's face went pale. I was going to pay it back." "You were going to pay back money you stole? That's an interesting defense. Can you also explain these cash withdrawals? $200 here, $300 there, all withdrawn at casinos. I had a problem, I've sought help for it. You had a problem that you funded by stealing from a vulnerable elderly man you were supposed to be caring for. Is that accurate? Marcus had no good answer. He stammered, backpedaled, tried to justify it, but the evidence was right there in black and white. Jennifer wasn't done. She pulled out photos of my injuries. Mr. Patterson, if you were providing therapeutic activity for Mr. Russell, why did that activity result in injuries? Why are his hands bruised and bleeding in these photos? I didn't know his hands were hurt. He never told me. He never told you his hands were bleeding from the manual labor you forced him to do. Are you saying you never saw these injuries? He must have hidden them from me. Hidden them while he was washing your dishes, while he was doing your laundry, while he was scrubbing your floors. You expect this court to believe you never once noticed your father-in-law's hands were injured from the work you were making him do. Marcus had no answer. He just sat there, his confident facade crumbling. Jennifer went through every lie, every inconsistency, every piece of evidence that contradicted his testimony. By the time she finished, Marcus looked like a man who knew he was beaten. Then Rebecca testified, and it was even worse. My daughter sat on that stand and tried to defend what had happened. She claimed she didn't know how bad things were, that she thought I was happy with the arrangement, that Marcus had convinced her I needed the structure and routine. But when Jennifer asked her directly, "Ms. Russell Patterson, did you see your father's injured hands?" she couldn't lie. "Yes," she whispered. "Did you see him doing hours of manual labor every day?" "Yes." "Did you see him sleeping in a storage room while you and your husband occupied his master bedroom?" "Yes." "And did you do anything to stop it?" Rebecca broke down completely. I thought Dad was okay with it. Marcus said it was good for him, said he needed purpose. I didn't want to believe it was wrong. I didn't want to see it." "You didn't want to see your father being abused because it was convenient for you," Jennifer said, "and it wasn't a question." Rebecca just cried. Judge Rodriguez had been taking notes throughout all of this, her expression unreadable. When both sides had finished presenting their cases, she sat back and looked at all of us. "I'm going to make my ruling now," she said. "This is one of the clearest cases of elder abuse and financial exploitation I've seen in my years on the bench. The evidence is overwhelming and, frankly, disturbing." She turned to Marcus. "Mr. Patterson, you systematically abused a vulnerable elderly man who trusted you. You stole his money to fund a gambling addiction. You forced him into servitude in his own home. You isolated him, degraded him, and stripped him of his dignity. These are serious crimes, and I'm forwarding this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution." Marcus's face went white. Judge Rodriguez continued, "Furthermore, I'm granting all of Mr. Russell's requested relief. The protective order is made permanent. Marcus Patterson is barred from coming within 500 feet of Ambrose Russell. All access to Mr. Russell's financial accounts is permanently revoked. Any money taken from those accounts is to be repaid in full with interest." She turned to Rebecca. "Ms. Russell Patterson, you enabled this abuse. You stood by while your father suffered. That makes you complicit. While I'm not forwarding criminal charges against you at this time, you should be aware that your inaction may subject you to civil liability." Rebecca sobbed harder. "As for the property," Judge Rodriguez said, her voice firm, "this court finds that Marcus and Rebecca Patterson have no legal right to occupy Ambrose Russell's home. They are not tenants. They are trespassers who gained entry through fraud and coercion. They are hereby ordered to vacate the property within 48 hours. If they fail to do so, law enforcement will remove them forcibly." My heart leaped. 48 hours. I was getting my home back. "Mr. Russell," the judge said, looking at me with compassion, "I'm sorry for what you've endured. No one should be treated the way you were treated, especially not by family. I hope this ruling brings you some measure of justice and allows you to begin healing. This court stands adjourned." She banged her gavel, and it was over. Benjamin hugged me tight. Jennifer was smiling. I was crying, but this time from relief, from joy, from the overwhelming feeling of being heard, believed, and vindicated. As we left the courtroom, I caught one last glimpse of Rebecca. She was still crying, and for a moment our eyes met. I saw regret there, maybe even remorse, but I also saw the consequences of her choices written all over her face. I looked away. I wasn't ready to forgive. I didn't know if I ever would be. 48 hours later, Benjamin and I pulled up to my house. Our house, the locks had been changed, the court had ordered it. Marcus and Rebecca's car was gone from the driveway. The house was empty. I stood on my front porch, the porch where Margaret and I used to sit on summer evenings, where we'd watched our kids play in the yard, and I put my new key in the lock. My hands were shaking, but this time from emotion, not fear. The door swung open. The house was a mess. They'd left in a hurry, clearly. There was trash in the living room, dirty dishes in the sink. The master bedroom was cluttered with their belongings they'd abandoned. But it was my mess now, my house, my space. Benjamin and I spent the next week cleaning, reclaiming, transforming the house back into a home. We threw out everything that reminded me of those 8 months. We repainted. We rearranged furniture. We made it mine again. The neighbors came by, one after another, to welcome me home. Mrs. Chen from next door brought soup. I knew something was wrong. She said tearfully, "I saw you working outside in all weather, looking so tired. I should have said something sooner." "It's not your fault," I told her, and I meant it. The only people at fault were Marcus and Rebecca. Adult Protective Services followed up regularly. So did Patricia, my therapist. The healing was slow, but it was happening. 3 weeks after the court hearing, I got a letter from Rebecca. Benjamin brought it to me, his face carefully neutral. "It's from her," he said simply. "You don't have to read it if you don't want to." I stared at the envelope for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away without opening it. Part of me needed to know what she had to say. Finally, I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten in Rebecca's familiar script. She apologized. Over and over she apologized. She explained that she'd been so wrapped up in her marriage, so desperate to believe Marcus was a good man, that she'd convinced herself what was happening to me was acceptable. She admitted she'd been wrong, that she'd failed me as a daughter, that she'd chosen her husband over her father and would regret it for the rest of her life. She wrote that she'd left Marcus, that seeing him exposed in court for what he really was had finally broken through her denial, that she was living with a friend now, trying to figure out her life, that she understood if I never wanted to see her again, but that she hoped someday I might forgive her. I read that letter 3 times, and each time I felt something different: anger, sadness, a tiny, reluctant softening. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not yet, maybe not ever, but I also wasn't ready to completely close the door. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday we'd talk, but not today. Today I was still healing, still reclaiming my life, still learning how to be Ambrose Russell again. Benjamin stayed with me for another month before he had to return to Seattle. Those weeks together were a gift. We talked about everything, about Mom, about the past, about what had happened, about the future. We laughed together, we cried together, we rebuilt not just my house, but our relationship. The night before he left, we sat on the front porch together, just like Margaret and I used to do. The autumn air was crisp, the stars were bright, and for the first time in almost a year, I felt at peace. "Thank you," I said to my son. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Benjamin shook his head. "Dad, you saved yourself. You survived 8 months of hell. You found the strength to walk out that door with me. You testified in court and faced them down. I just helped clear the path. The courage was all yours." "I don't feel very courageous," I admitted. "I feel like I should have stood up sooner, should have been stronger." "Courage isn't about never being afraid or never being broken," Benjamin said. "It's about surviving anyway. It's about getting back up. You did that, Dad. You're still doing it. That's the most courageous thing I've ever seen." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Benjamin asked a question that had been hanging between us for weeks. "What are you going to do about Rebecca?" I sighed. "I don't know. Part of me is still so angry I can't think straight when I think about her. She watched it happen. She participated. She chose him over me. But she's still your daughter," Benjamin said quietly, "and she's lost everything now too, her marriage, her relationship with you, her home. I'm not saying you have to forgive her. I'm not saying you owe her anything. But I also know you, Dad. I know you're going to struggle with this for a long time. She wrote me a letter," I told him, "said she left Marcus, said she's sorry, said she hopes I can forgive her someday. Do you believe her?" "I don't know, maybe. I think she's sorry she got caught. I think she's sorry there were consequences. I don't know if she truly understands what she did to me, what it felt like to be abandoned by my own daughter." Benjamin nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you want to never speak to her again, that's your right. If you eventually want to try to rebuild some kind of relationship, I'll support that too. This is your choice, Dad, your healing, your life." The next morning, I drove Benjamin to the airport. We hugged goodbye, and he made me promise to call him every week, to keep going to therapy, to take care of myself. "I'll be fine," I assured him. "You've taught me well, and besides, I'm tougher than I look." "I know you are," Benjamin said with a smile. "You're the toughest person I know. I love you, Dad." "I love you too, son." Watching him walk through airport security, I felt a surge of pride. I'd raised that man. Me and Margaret, we'd raised a son who would drop everything to save his father, who would fight for justice without hesitation, who would stand up to bullies and abusers no matter the cost. Whatever mistakes I'd made in life, I'd done something right there. The criminal case against Marcus took months to wind through the system. Jennifer kept me updated on every development. The district attorney had charged him with elder abuse, financial exploitation, theft, and fraud. Each charge carried serious prison time. Marcus's expensive lawyer tried everything to get the charges reduced or dismissed, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bank records, the medical records, my testimony, neighbor testimonies, even Rebecca's tearful admission that she'd witnessed the abuse. 6 months after that first court hearing, Marcus took a plea deal. He pled guilty to financial exploitation and elder abuse in exchange for having the other charges dropped. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution of the stolen money plus damages. 4 years. It didn't feel like enough for what he'd done to me, but Jennifer explained that 4 years was actually a significant sentence for this type of crime. And the restitution order meant I'd get my money back, eventually, even if it took garnishing his wages for the rest of his life. I didn't attend the sentencing hearing. I didn't need to see Marcus again. I'd said everything I needed to say in that first court appearance. Now, I just wanted to move forward. Rebecca wasn't charged criminally, but Jennifer filed a civil lawsuit against her on my behalf. We settled out of court. She agreed to pay a portion of the restitution and to have no contact with me unless I initiated it. The money didn't matter as much as the acknowledgement, the legal recognition that what she'd done was wrong. As the months passed, I slowly rebuilt my life. I reconnected with old friends from the fire department. I started volunteering at the local senior center, helping other elderly people navigate resources and avoid the kind of situation I'd fallen into. If my experience could help even one person recognize abuse and get out, then something good would come from it. Patricia, my therapist, helped me work through the trauma. The nightmares gradually became less frequent. The panic attacks, when I heard dishes clattering or someone walking behind me, started to fade. The shame that had been crushing me for so long began to lift. I learned that what happened to me wasn't unique. Elder abuse is shockingly common. Experts estimate that 1 in 10 older adults experiences some form of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Most never report it because of shame, fear, or because the abuser is a family member they don't want to get in trouble. I started speaking at community centers and churches about my experience. It was terrifying at first, standing up in front of strangers and admitting what had happened to me. But every time I finished speaking, people would come up to me. Sometimes they'd tell me about their own experiences with abuse. Sometimes they'd thank me for giving voice to something they'd been going through in silence. Sometimes they'd just hug me and we'd cry together. One woman, probably in her 70s, grabbed my hand after a talk and whispered, "My son-in-law treats me the same way. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was crazy." I helped her connect with Adult Protective Services that same day. 6 months later, she sent me a card thanking me. She'd gotten out. She'd gotten her life back because I'd shared my story. That's when I realized that my suffering hadn't been meaningless, that surviving and speaking up had purpose, that maybe this was my calling now, to be a voice for people who felt voiceless, to be proof that you can survive and reclaim your life even after abuse. It was almost a year after Benjamin had rescued me from that kitchen when Rebecca reached out again. Not through a letter this time, but through Benjamin. She'd asked him if he thought I might be willing to meet with her, to talk. Benjamin called me immediately. "Dad, Rebecca wants to see you. She's been in therapy. She's divorced Marcus. She says she has things she needs to say to you in person, but I told her I wouldn't even ask unless you were ready. So I'm asking, are you ready?" I thought about it for a long time. Was I ready? Had enough healing happened? Could I face my daughter without the anger consuming me? "I don't know if I can forgive her," I said honestly. "She's not asking for forgiveness," Benjamin said. "She just wants a chance to apologize in person, to try to explain, to maybe start the process of something, I don't know what. But Dad, I've talked to her. She's different. She's genuinely remorseful. She's been doing the work. I'm not saying you owe her anything, but I think hearing her out might help you too, give you closure if nothing else." Closure, maybe that's what I needed. Maybe I needed to look my daughter in the eye and hear her explain how she could have done what she did. Maybe I needed to tell her exactly how much she'd hurt me. Maybe I needed to decide, once and for all, if there was any path forward or if this was truly the end of our relationship. "Okay," I said, "I'll meet with her, but on my terms, at the house, with you there. And she needs to understand I'm not making any promises about what happens after." Benjamin arranged it for the following Saturday. I spent the week preparing myself emotionally, going to extra therapy sessions, talking through what I wanted to say, what boundaries I needed to set. When Saturday came, I was as ready as I'd ever be. Rebecca arrived at exactly 2 p.m. as arranged. I watched from the window as she got out of her car, a small, modest sedan, nothing like the flashy SUV she and Marcus used to drive. She looked different, thinner, older. Her hair was pulled back simply, no makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater. She looked diminished somehow, humbled. Benjamin answered the door and led her into the living room where I was waiting. When she saw me, she stopped in her tracks, and I watched her eyes fill with tears. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Rebecca," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. We sat down, me in my chair, Rebecca on the couch, Benjamin in the other chair acting as referee and support. The silence stretched out, awkward and heavy. Finally, Rebecca spoke. "Thank you for agreeing to see me. I know you didn't have to. I know I don't deserve it." Her voice was shaking. "I've spent the last year trying to understand how I let things get so bad, how I let Marcus do what he did, how I participated in it. And the truth is, there's no good explanation, no excuse that makes it okay." She took a deep breath, and I could see her struggling to maintain composure. "I was a coward, Dad. I saw what was happening and I told myself lies because facing the truth was too hard. I told myself you were okay with it, that Marcus was helping you, that you needed structure. But deep down I knew it was wrong, and I looked away because my marriage was more important to me than your well-being, because I was scared of what would happen if I stood up to Marcus, because I was weak." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't stop talking. "I watched you become a ghost of yourself. I saw the bruises. I saw you exhausted and frightened, and I did nothing. I was your daughter. I was supposed to protect you. You spent my whole life protecting me, taking care of me, making sure I was safe and loved. And when you needed me, I abandoned you. I let him torture you. I participated in it. And I am so, so sorry." She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking with the weight of her guilt and remorse. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay, to make her pain go away like I'd done her whole life when she was hurting. But I couldn't, because it wasn't okay. What she'd done wasn't okay. Do you know what the worst part was? I said, my voice harder than I intended. It wasn't the physical exhaustion. It wasn't even Marcus treating me like dirt. The worst part was looking at you every day and seeing my daughter, my baby girl who I raised, who I loved more than life itself, and seeing her turn away from me, seeing her choose her husband over her father. That broke something in me, Rebecca, something I don't know can be fixed. She nodded, still crying. I know I broke your trust, I broke us, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want me in your life. I just needed you to know that I see what I did now. I understand the magnitude of it, and I will spend the rest of my life being sorry for it. Why, I asked, why did you choose him? Why did you stay silent? Rebecca was quiet for a long time, wiping her tears, trying to find the words. I was scared. She finally said, Marcus had this way of making me feel like I needed him, like I was nothing without him. He'd put me down, build me back up, make me dependent on his approval, and somewhere along the way I lost myself. I stopped trusting my own judgment. When I saw what was happening to you, a part of me knew it was wrong. But Marcus would tell me you were fine, that you needed structure, that we were helping you. And I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was admitting I'd married a monster, admitting I'd made a terrible mistake, admitting I was trapped in an abusive marriage myself. That stopped me cold. He abused you too. Not physically, she said quickly, but emotionally, psychologically, yes. He controlled everything, what I wore, who I talked to, how I spent my time. He made me feel worthless, stupid, incapable, and I thought that was love, that was normal. So when he started treating you the same way, some sick part of me accepted it as normal too. I felt a complicated wave of emotions, anger that she was trying to excuse her behavior, but also a reluctant understanding. I'd seen how manipulative Marcus was, how good he was at twisting reality. If he'd been doing that to Rebecca for years, maybe she hadn't been strong enough to break free. Maybe she'd been a victim too, even as she helped victimize me. That doesn't make what you did okay, I said firmly. You were an adult. You had choices. You could have left. You could have called Benjamin. You could have done something. You're right, she agreed immediately. I did have choices, and I made the wrong ones. Every single day, I made the wrong choice, and I have to live with that. I have to live with knowing I hurt the person who loved me most in the world. We sat in silence for a while. Benjamin had been quiet through all of this, letting us talk, but I could see the emotion on his face too. I divorced Marcus, Rebecca said eventually. 3 months after the court hearing, I finally saw him for what he really was, and I've been in therapy ever since, trying to understand how I got to that place, how I became someone capable of what I did. My therapist says I was in an abusive relationship myself, that Marcus groomed me over years to accept his control. But I also know that doesn't absolve me. I still made choices. I still hurt you. What do you want from me, Rebecca? I asked. Why are you here? What do you expect to happen? She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't expect anything, Dad. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. I needed you to know I've left him. I'm getting help. I'm trying to become someone worthy of your love again. Even if you can never forgive me, I needed you to know that. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you without remembering those 8 months, without remembering how you stood by and watched me suffer. I understand, she whispered, and I don't blame you. If our positions were reversed, I don't know if I could forgive me either. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was broken too, maybe not in the same way I'd been broken, but broken nonetheless. She'd lost her marriage, her home, her father's trust, her sense of self. She was trying to rebuild just like I was. I'm not ready to have you back in my life, I said slowly. Not the way things were, maybe not ever, but I'm also not ready to say never. I need more time. I need to see that the changes you're talking about are real and lasting. I need to trust that you understand the magnitude of what happened and that you'll never let something like that happen again. Hope flickered in her eyes. Does that mean? It means I'm not closing the door completely, I said, but I'm not opening it either. It means maybe, in time, if you continue doing the work, if you prove that you've genuinely changed, maybe we can have some kind of relationship. But it will never be what it was. You need to understand that. I do, she said quickly. I understand, and I'm grateful for even that much. I'm grateful you're willing to leave the possibility open. She stood up, and I could see she was preparing to leave. Before she reached the door, she turned back. Dad, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you, for surviving, for fighting back, for being strong enough to reclaim your life. You were always my hero when I was growing up. You still are. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The words tangled in my throat, too many emotions, too much pain, too much unresolved history. After she left, Benjamin and I sat in silence for a long time. How do you feel? He finally asked. I don't know, I admitted. Angry, sad, confused, a little bit hopeful. Is that crazy? After everything she did, part of me still wants my daughter back. That's not crazy, Benjamin said gently. That's love, that's being a father. But you're right to take it slow. Trust has to be earned back. If she's genuine about changing, she'll understand that and be patient. If she's not, she'll get frustrated and give up. Either way, you'll have your answer. What do you think? I asked. Do you think she's genuine? Benjamin considered the question carefully. I think she's genuinely remorseful. I think she's genuinely trying to change. Whether that's enough, whether she can truly become someone trustworthy again, that remains to be seen. But I also think you're handling this exactly right. Cautious openness, hope without expectations, that's probably the healthiest approach. Over the next year, Rebecca and I had occasional supervised contacts, always with Benjamin present, either in person or on video call. Short conversations, usually on neutral topics. She'd update me on her therapy progress, her new job working at a nonprofit that helped domestic violence survivors, perhaps her way of trying to atone. She never pushed for more than I was willing to give, never demanded forgiveness or intimacy. Slowly, very slowly, something began to shift. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Maybe the beginning of acceptance that people are complicated, that someone can be both victim and perpetrator, that my daughter had been manipulated and controlled even as she helped someone manipulate and control me. It didn't make what she did okay, it didn't erase the pain, but it added context, it added nuance. Meanwhile, my own healing continued. The volunteer work at the senior center became a passion. I helped develop programs to educate elderly people about financial abuse and how to recognize warning signs. I trained staff on how to spot potential elder abuse. I even worked with legislators on improving elder protection laws. My story made the local news, then regional news, then I was invited to speak at a national conference on elder abuse prevention. Standing on that stage, sharing what happened to me with hundreds of people, I realized something profound. Marcus had tried to erase me, to reduce me to nothing more than a servant, a tool for his convenience. He'd tried to strip away my dignity, my identity, my worth. But I was still here, still standing, still fighting. Not just for myself anymore, but for everyone like me. Everyone who'd been made to feel small and powerless and worthless by people who were supposed to love them. That's power, that's purpose, that's a life reclaimed. It's been 2 years now since Benjamin walked into that kitchen and found me washing dishes with bleeding hands. 2 years since he rescued me, since we fought back, since I took my life back. My house is fully mine again, filled with memories both old and new. I've redecorated, made it brighter, more cheerful. Margaret's photos are displayed proudly. So are photos of Benjamin, his wife, their kids, my grandchildren who I get to see regularly now. There's even, recently, a new photo. One of Rebecca and me, taken last month. We're not hugging or smiling widely, the wounds are still too fresh for that, but we're standing together, and there's something in both our expressions that looks like hope. We're working on rebuilding our relationship. It's slow, it's hard. There are setbacks and difficult conversations, but we are trying. She's proven through 2 years of consistent therapy, changed behavior, and patient respect for my boundaries that she's genuinely committed to becoming someone trustworthy again. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we once did, Probably not. But maybe we can have something new, something built on honesty and growth instead of unexamined expectations. Marcus is in prison. He'll be there for another 2 years. Part of me hopes he's learned something, changed somehow, but honestly, I don't think about him much anymore. He doesn't deserve space in my thoughts. What I think about instead is this: I'm 70 years old now. I survived 32 years of firefighting. I survived losing my wife. I survived being abused by my own family, and I'm still here, still strong, still valuable, still worthy. I wake up every morning in my own bed, in my own home, living my own life. I make my own choices. I see my friends. I volunteer. I spend time with my grandchildren. I'm writing a book about my experience, hoping it might help others recognize abuse and get out before it's too late. This is what survival looks like: not perfect, not without scars, but free, dignified, purposeful. My hands have healed, though they still carry faint scars, but those scars remind me of what I survived. They remind me that I'm stronger than I thought, that dignity can be stolen but also reclaimed, that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're being controlled, degraded, abused by someone who's supposed to love you, please know this: it's not your fault. You're not weak. You're not crazy. What's happening to you is wrong, and you deserve better. Reach out, tell someone, call Adult Protective Services, call a domestic violence hotline, tell a doctor, a neighbor, a friend. Don't suffer in silence like I did. Don't let shame keep you trapped. Because you are valuable, you are worthy, you deserve dignity and respect and love. No matter your age, no matter your circumstances, you deserve better than abuse. And if you find the courage to speak up, to get out, to reclaim your life, you'll discover something amazing. You're stronger than you ever knew. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me share the darkest period of my life and the light that came after. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. I love knowing that my story is reaching people all over the world. Remember, elder abuse happens everywhere in every community, but so does survival, so does justice, so does healing. My name is Ambrose Russell. I'm 70 years old. I'm a retired firefighter, a father, a grandfather, and a survivor. And I want you to know, if I can reclaim my life and dignity after what happened to me, so can you. You are not alone, you are not helpless, you are worthy of so much better. Thank you, and please, click the box on the left for the next story.